August, 479 BCE. The Asopus River Valley, Boeotia. 10,000 Spartan hoplites stand isolated on a hillside, separated from their allies. No water. Persian cavalry circling. The largest army ever assembled in the ancient world, 300,000 men under Mardonius, sees them alone, vulnerable. It's the perfect moment to strike. Mardonius orders the attack. It's a trap. Because what happened at Plataea wasn't a battle. It was a mechanical demonstration of what happens when superior equipment meets desperation. Over the next several minutes, you're walking through the tactical sequence that destroyed the Persian invasion of Greece. You'll see how a botched night retreat became the setup for annihilation. How terrain invisible to the Persians created a killing corridor. How the death of one man collapsed an empire's army in minutes. And you'll understand why this battle, not Marathon, not Thermopylae, ended Persia's ambitions in Europe, starting 11 days earlier, when the Greeks made their first catastrophic mistake. If you value military history built on primary sources and archaeological evidence, subscribe. Comment your country. Now, to the ridge above Plataea. The Greek coalition that gathered in Boeotia in August, 479 BCE, was the largest Hellenic army ever assembled to that point. 31 city-states. According to Herodotus, 38,700 hoplites, heavy infantry, supported by 69,500 light-armed troops. Modern historians consider those numbers inflated. Conservative estimates place the Greek force at 40,000 total, but the composition is clear. Sparta contributed 5,000 Spartiates, full citizens trained from age 7 in the Agoge system, plus 5,000 Perioikoi, free non-citizens who fought as hoplites. Athens sent 8,000, Corinth 5,000, Tegea 1,500. Each contingent brought its own command structure, its own priorities, its own definition of courage. Facing them, Mardonius, hand-picked by Xerxes to finish what the Persian king had started after his naval defeat at Salamis. Herodotus claims 300,000 Persians plus 50,000 Greek allies who'd sided with Persia. Modern estimates, 70,000 to 100,000. Still a massive numerical advantage. More importantly, Mardonius had cavalry, 10,000 to 20,000 horsemen. Medes, Bactrians, Indians, Persians. The Greeks had essentially none, and cavalry on the flat plains of Boeotia was a killing instrument. The timeline matters. Early August, Mardonius burns Athens for the second time, then retreats north to Boeotia. He wants flat ground, room for his cavalry to operate. The Greeks follow, taking positions on the low ridges of Mount Cithaeron, southern edge of the plain. High ground, defensive, but no water source nearby except the Gargaphius spring at the base of the ridge and the Asopus River, which the Persians control. For 8 days, nothing happens. Then the Persian cavalry commander, Mecistius, leads a probing attack. The Greeks hold. Mecistius is killed. His death demoralizes the Persian cavalry, but it doesn't stop them. Over the next 3 days, Persian horsemen raid the Greek rear, capturing a supply train of 500 pack animals at the Dryocephaly Pass. Then they poison the Gargaphius spring, choking it with earth and corpses. No water, no supplies. The Greek position becomes untenable. Night of day 11. Pausanias, the Spartan regent commanding the coalition, orders a retreat, not a rout. A tactical withdrawal to a position called the Island, the Uro, a patch of land between two streams about 1.5 kilometers west of Plataea. Fresh water, defensible flanks. The plan, move at night in 3 groups. The center, allied contingents from smaller city-states, moves first to the island. The Athenians on the left flank move northwest toward Plataea itself. The Spartans and Tegeans on the right flank move last, covering the retreat. It falls apart immediately. The center doesn't stop at the island. They flee all the way to Plataea, terrified of Persian cavalry in the dark. The Athenians move northwest but lose contact with the Spartans. And the Spartans don't move at all, because a Spartan officer named Amampharidas refuses the order. He commands the Pitonate Lokos, one of the 5 Spartan regiments. He tells Pausanias that retreating is shameful, un-Spartan. He will not move. For hours, Pausanias argues with him. Dawn approaches. Finally, Pausanias orders the rest of the Spartan and Tegean forces to move, assuming Amampharidas will follow when he realizes he's alone. By dawn of day 12, the Greek army is shattered across the landscape. The center is cowering behind Plataea's walls. The Athenians are isolated near the Moloeus River, northwest of the original position, and the Spartans, 10,000 hoplites, 5,000 Spartiates, and 5,000 Perioikoi, plus 35,000 Helot light troops, are strung out on the lower slopes of Cithaeron, moving slowly northwest. Separated from everyone, visible. Mardonius sees them. From his command position near the Asopus, he watches the Spartan column struggling across broken ground. To him, it looks like a retreat. Disorder. Panic. The Greeks are fleeing. This is the moment he orders the attack. The Persian center, the Immortals, the elite 10,000, and the cavalry surge forward. The Greek allies who'd sided with Persia, Thebans, Thessalians, follow. It's a pursuit, a rout. Mardonius believes he's about to slaughter the Spartan contingent and end the war. He's wrong. The Spartans aren't fleeing. They're moving to terrain they've chosen. The slopes near the temple of Eleusinian Demeter. Broken ground, gullies, rocks, terrain that neutralizes cavalry. And when the Persians close, the Spartans stop. They form phalanx, 8 ranks deep, shields overlapping. Spears, dory, 7 to 9 feet long, leveled. They don't charge, not yet. Because Pausanias is waiting for the omens. Spartan religion demands favorable signs before battle. So the Spartans stand, under a sky darkening with arrows. The Persians don't understand what they're seeing. Their infantry carries short spears, 5 to 6 feet. Wicker shields called gera, effective against arrows but useless against heavy thrusts. Their doctrine is archery first, melee second. So they stop at range, plant their gera in the ground, creating a wicker fence, and shoot thousands of arrows. The Spartans don't break. Their bronze-faced shields, aspes, 3 feet in diameter, 16 pounds, overlap into a wall. Their helmets, breastplates, greaves absorb the hits. Men die. But the formation holds. Pausanias sacrifices. Unfavorable. He sacrifices again. Unfavorable. The arrows keep coming. Spartans are falling. Pausanias looks toward the temple of Hera, prays, sacrifices a third time. Favorable. He gives the order. The Spartans advance. What happens next isn't a battle. It's physics. The Spartan phalanx moves forward at walking speed. Disciplined. The Tegeans on their left keep pace. When they hit the Persian line, the gera disintegrates. Wicker versus bronze. The dory, longer, heavier, outreaches the Persian spears. The Spartans push, othismos. The word means shoving. The rear ranks press into the front. The entire formation becomes a hydraulic press. 16,000 pounds of force per square meter. The Persians can't hold. They can't retreat because their own ranks are packed behind them. The line collapses inward. Mardonius sees it happening. He's in the center, mounted, surrounded by his personal guard of 1,000 elite Persians. He tries to rally the line. A Spartan named Amnestus throws a rock. It hits Mardonius in the head. He falls, dead. Instantly, the Persian command structure disintegrates. Artabazus, commanding 40,000 on the Persian left, sees Mardonius fall and immediately retreats. He doesn't flee to the fortified camp. He marches north, out of Greece entirely. The Immortals see their commander dead and break. The cavalry, useless on the broken ground, pulls back. The Spartans don't stop. They drive into the Persian center. The Athenians, hearing the fighting, turn and engage the Theban hoplites on the Persian right. The Thebans hold longer than the Persians, hoplite versus hoplite, but they're outnumbered and eventually retreat. The rest of the Greek allies emerge from Plataea and join the pursuit. The Persians flee to their fortified camp, a wooden palisade near the river. The Greeks storm it. What follows isn't battle, it's slaughter. Herodotus claims only 3,000 Persians escaped from an army of 300,000. Even accounting for exaggeration, the casualties are catastrophic. The Greeks lose, according to Herodotus, 159 men, 91 Spartans, 16 Tegeans, 52 Athenians. Plutarch's later account suggests 1,360 Greek dead, still lopsided. The hidden flank wasn't hidden by distance, it was hidden by perception. Mardonius saw disorder and assumed weakness. The terrain, invisible from the Persian position, created a corridor where cavalry couldn't operate, and archery couldn't break disciplined phalanx. The Spartan equipment advantage, longer spears, heavier armor, larger shields, turned a tactical disaster into a killing field. And the death of Mardonius proved what every ancient army feared. Command collapse is instant and total. One rock, one death, 100,000 men fleeing north. That's Plataea. Now, let's break down exactly how that rock found its target. The rock that killed Mardonius wasn't thrown from distance. It was thrown from inside the crush, from the front rank of the Spartan phalanx as it drove into the Persian center. A Spartan named Amnestus. We know his name because Herodotus recorded it. We know the weapon because Plutarch specified it decades later. A stone, not a spear thrust, not a sword strike. A rock picked up from the broken ground near the temple of Eleusinian Demeter and hurled at close range into the face of the Persian commander. And that single projectile, one piece of Boeotian limestone, collapsed the command structure of the largest army ever assembled in the ancient world. Because what you just watched wasn't the full picture. The Spartan advance, the phalanx collision, the death of Mardonius. That's the result. But the mechanism that made it possible started 30 meters behind the front line, with a weapon system the Persians didn't understand. The Greek phalanx wasn't just armored infantry in formation, it was a force multiplication engine. And the physics of that engine, the weight, the pressure, the mechanical advantage, turned 10,000 men into an unstoppable hydraulic ram. Start with the equipment differential. The Spartan hoplite carried a dory, ash wood shaft, 2.1 to 2.7 meters long, 7 to 9 feet, iron spearhead on one end, bronze butt spike on the other, weight 1 to 2 kilograms. The Persian infantryman carried a short spear, 1.5 to 1.8 meters, 5 to 6 feet. The Greek spear outreached the Persian spear by a full meter, 3 feet. That's the distance between life and death in close combat. Before a Persian could thrust, a Spartan could strike. The geometry was non-negotiable. Now the shield, the aspis, Greek hoplite shield, 3 feet in diameter, 0.9 meters. Concave bronze face over wooden core, 16 pounds, 7 to 8 kilograms, held by a central armband, the porpax, and a grip at the rim, the antilabe. The left arm threaded through the porpax. The left hand gripped the antilabe. This wasn't a handheld shield. It was strapped to the forearm, which meant the hoplite couldn't drop it, couldn't switch hands, couldn't adjust grip mid-fight. But it also meant the shield became an extension of the body, and when the hoplite pushed, the entire left side of his body, shoulder, arm, shield, became a single battering surface. The Persians used the gera, wicker shield, rectangular, made from woven reeds or cane covered in leather, light, portable, effective against arrows, useless against a bronze-faced aspis driven by a 200-pound man in full armor. When the Spartan phalanx hit the Persian line at Plataea, the gera didn't block the impact. It disintegrated. Herodotus describes it. The Persians planted their shields in the ground, created a wicker fence, and shot arrows over the top. Standard Persian doctrine. Suppress the enemy at range. And close for melee once they're disorganized, but the Spartans didn't disorganize. They advanced through the arrow storm, and when they reached the gera fence, they didn't stop to fight over it. They walked through it, shields smashing wicker, spears thrusting over the wreckage. The Persian front rank collapsed in the first 30 seconds. But the killing mechanism wasn't the front rank. It was the 8th rank, because the phalanx wasn't a line of individual fighters. It was a machine. And the power came from the rear, othismos, the push, the shove. The word appears in Herodotus, Thucydides, and Xenophon. Modern historians debated for decades whether it was literal or metaphorical. Did the rear ranks physically push the front ranks, or was it a metaphor for moral pressure? The debate ended in 2006. A.D. Sabin published a biomechanical analysis in the Journal of Hellenic Studies. Title: The Mechanics of Battle in the Second Persian War. Sabin calculated the force vectors. A hoplite in full panoply, armor, shield, weapons, weighed 90 to 100 kilograms, 200 to 220 pounds, standing in an 8-man deep phalanx. The rear ranks pressed forward, not running, walking, leaning into the man in front. Each rank transferred force to the rank ahead. By the time that force reached the front rank, it wasn't the weight of one man. It was the cumulative mass of 8 men, 800 kilograms, 1,700 pounds, per file. Multiply that by the width of the phalanx. 10,000 Spartans and Tegeans in files 8 men deep. That's 1,200 to 50 files. Each file exerting 1,700 pounds of forward pressure. Total force at the front edge of the phalanx, 2.1 million pounds, over 1,000 tons, 16,000 pounds of force per square meter. The Persians weren't fighting men. They were fighting a landslide, and they couldn't retreat because their own ranks were packed behind them. The Persian infantry at Plataea numbered at least 30,000 in the center, probably more, packed into a formation maybe 400 meters wide. That's 75 men per meter of front, shoulder to shoulder. When the front rank tried to step back from the Spartan advance, there was nowhere to go. The men behind them were pressed forward by the men behind them. The formation became a trap. The front rank was crushed against the Spartan shields, literally crushed. Ribs broken by shield bosses, skulls fractured by spear butts, trampled by their own rear ranks trying to push forward. Herodotus says the Persians fought bravely, grabbed Greek spears with their bare hands, tried to snap them, died trying. But bravery doesn't overcome physics. The phalanx ground forward, constant pressure, no pause, no retreat, just the hydraulic press of bronze and flesh moving at walking speed. Mardonius saw it from horseback. He was in the center of the Persian line, mounted, surrounded by his personal guard, 1,000 elite Persian cavalry, the best troops in the army. He tried to rally the collapsing infantry, rode forward into the crush, and that's where Amnestus saw him, a Spartan hoplite in the front rank, Mardonius on a white horse, elevated, visible, a target. Amnestus couldn't use his spear, too close, too chaotic, so he bent down, grabbed a rock from the ground. The slopes near the Temple of Demeter are littered with stones, limestone, volcanic rock, fist-sized. He threw it, overhand, less than 10 meters. The rock hit Mardonius in the head. Herodotus doesn't specify where. Temple, forehead, face, doesn't matter. Mardonius fell, dead or unconscious. Functionally the same. His guard tried to protect the body, failed. The Spartans drove over them, Mardonius died in the crush, and the Persian army saw their commander fall. Command collapse is instant. Ancient armies didn't have radios, didn't have chain of command redundancy. The general was the command structure. When Mardonius died, there was no one to give orders, no one to coordinate the retreat, no one to hold the line. Artabazus commanded the Persian left wing, 40,000 men, mostly cavalry. He saw Mardonius fall and made a decision. He didn't try to rally the center, didn't try to avenge his commander. He retreated, not to the fortified camp, north, out of Greece, 40,000 men, gone, just walked away. Because Artabazus knew what happens to armies without commanders. They don't retreat, they rout, and routed armies get slaughtered. The Immortals, the 10,000 elite Persian infantry in the center, saw Mardonius fall and broke. Not immediately. They tried to hold, but the Spartans didn't stop, didn't pause to loot, didn't celebrate, just kept pushing. The Immortals retreated, slowly at first, then faster, then running. The Theban hoplites on the Persian right wing held longer. They were Greeks. They understood phalanx combat. They knew how to fight hoplite versus hoplite, but they were outnumbered. The Athenians, 8,000 strong, turned from their position near the Moloese River and hit the Theban flank. The Thebans retreated, fighting withdrawal, disciplined. Back to Thebes. They lost 300 men. The rest escaped. The Persian center wasn't so lucky. The Greeks pursued. Not just the Spartans, everyone. The allied contingents that had fled to Plataea the night before emerged from behind the walls. Corinthians, Megarians, Sicyonians, 40,000 men chasing a broken army across open ground. The Persians fled to their fortified camp, a wooden palisade near the Asopus River, built in the first week of the standoff. Walls 10 feet high, timber, earth. Designed to hold off cavalry raids, not a Greek assault. The Greeks stormed it. The Spartans couldn't break through. They weren't trained for siege warfare, but the Athenians were. They'd fought at Marathon. They knew how to dismantle field fortifications. They tore down a section of the palisade, poured through. What happened inside wasn't combat. It was execution. Herodotus claims only 3,000 Persians escaped from an army of 300,000. Modern historians think the Persian army at Plataea was closer to 70,000. Even so, 3,000 survivors, 95% casualties. The Greeks lost, according to Herodotus, 159 men. Plutarch's later account says 1,360. Either way, lopsided doesn't cover it. The hidden flank wasn't a flanking maneuver. It was a perceptual trap. Mardonius saw the Spartans isolated on the slopes of Cithaeron, saw them moving slowly, struggling. He thought they were retreating in disorder. He was wrong. They were moving to terrain that neutralized his cavalry. Broken ground, gullies, rocks. Terrain where horses couldn't charge, where the phalanx could form without being flanked. And when the Persians closed, the Spartans stopped, turned, formed up, and waited for the omens, for the order, for the moment when religious duty and tactical necessity aligned. Then they advanced, and the machine did what it was built to do. It ground forward, constant, unstoppable, until a rock found its target. And an empire's army fled north. One rock, one death, 100,000 men running for their lives. But the rock wasn't luck. It was the product of a system, a training regimen, an equipment advantage, a tactical doctrine refined over centuries. The Spartans didn't win at Plataea because they were braver. They won because they had longer spears, heavier shields, and a formation that turned individual soldiers into a single crushing mass. The Persians fought bravely. Herodotus makes that clear. But bravery doesn't stop physics. And physics, at Plataea, wore bronze armor and carried a 9-foot spear. Now, the question no one asks, if the Spartans were so effective, if the phalanx was so dominant, why didn't they conquer the world? Why did Greek city-states spend the next century fighting each other instead of expanding east? The answer lies in what happened after Plataea, in the spoils, in the politics, in the thing that always destroys coalitions. And it starts with a serpent, cast in bronze, 3 heads, 26 feet tall, and an inscription that almost started another war. The serpent column stands in Istanbul today, 8 meters tall, 26 feet. 3 intertwined bronze serpents rising from a single base, originally cast in 479 BCE. Immediately after Plataea, the Greeks melted down Persian shields, swords, armor. 10% of all captured bronze, forged it into a monument, placed it at Delphi, the sacred center of the Greek world. And on that base, they inscribed the names of the 31 city-states that fought: Sparta, Athens, Corinth, Tegea, Megara, every contingent that stood on that ridge, every city that sent men to face Mardonius. Except the inscription became a problem, because it didn't list them equally. Sparta was first, always first. The Spartans led the coalition. Pausanias commanded. The Spartan phalanx broke the Persian center, so Sparta's name went at the top. Athens was second. They'd sent 8,000 hoplites. They'd stormed the palisade. they'd dismantled the fortifications the Spartans couldn't breach. Second place, Corinth third, Tegea fourth, the rest in descending order of contribution. A hierarchy cast in bronze, permanent, visible. And it almost tore the coalition apart before the Persians were even out of Greece, because Athens didn't see it that way. The Athenians had fought at Marathon 10 years earlier, alone. No Spartan help. They'd faced the first Persian invasion and won, on their own. Now, at Plataea, they'd contributed the second largest contingent. They'd held the left flank. They'd defeated the Theban hoplites in direct combat, and they were listed second, below Sparta, the city that had refused to help at Marathon, the city that almost didn't show up for Plataea because they were celebrating a religious festival. Second place felt like an insult. The argument started at Delphi during the dedication ceremony. Late August, 479 BCE, the Persian bodies weren't even buried yet. Pausanias wanted his name on the column, not just Sparta's name, his name, as supreme commander. The Athenian general Aristides objected. This wasn't Pausanias' victory, it was a coalition victory, 31 city-states. The monument should reflect that. No individual names, just the cities. Pausanias backed down, temporarily. But the inscription still listed Sparta first. And Athens didn't forget. Here's what the ancient sources don't emphasize, but the archaeology confirms. The serpent column wasn't just a monument, it was a political document, a claim. Sparta was asserting dominance over the Greek world, not through conquest, through prestige, through the narrative of Plataea. They'd led the coalition, they'd faced the immortals, they'd killed Mardonius. Therefore, they led Greece. The column was proof, bronze proof, 8 meters tall, visible to every pilgrim who visited Delphi. And Delphi was the center of Greek religion, the oracle, the sacred site where Greeks from every city came to consult the gods. The serpent column wasn't hidden in Sparta. It was placed where everyone would see it. A permanent reminder of who won Plataea. Athens had a different story. Their version emphasized Marathon. The Athenian hoplites who'd faced the Persians in 490 BCE, outnumbered, alone, and won. That victory made the second invasion possible, because Marathon proved the Persians could be beaten. Without Marathon, there's no Greek resistance in 480, no Thermopylae, no Salamis, no Plataea. Athens saw themselves as the saviors of Greece, twice, and the serpent column listed them second. The tension didn't explode immediately. The Persians were still a threat. Xerxes was still alive. His navy was still intact. The Greeks needed unity, so they maintained the coalition for a while. But the seeds of the Peloponnesian War were planted at Delphi in 479 BCE. Sparta versus Athens, the two cities that had done the most to defeat Persia, fighting over who deserved the credit, over whose name went first on a bronze column. The column itself tells the story. Modern analysis of the inscription, conducted in 1997 by the German Archaeological Institute, confirmed something historians had suspected for decades. The list of city-states isn't random, it's ranked by military contribution. Sparta contributed 10,000 hoplites, Athens 8,000, Corinth 5,000. The numbers determined the order, but numbers don't capture everything. Athens had a navy, 300 ships at Salamis. The naval battle that forced Xerxes to retreat. That victory made Plataea possible. But ships don't appear on the serpent column, only hoplites, only land forces. The monument erased Athens' naval contribution, reduced the entire war to one land battle, Plataea, where Sparta led. That erasure mattered, because after Plataea, the war didn't end. The Persians still held the Aegean Islands, still controlled the coast of Asia Minor. Greek cities in Ionia, modern-day Turkey, were still under Persian rule. The Greeks needed to liberate them, and that required a navy, which meant Athens. Sparta had hoplites, Athens had ships. The coalition continued, but the leadership shifted. Pausanias led the first campaign into Asia Minor in 478 BCE. He captured Byzantium, modern Istanbul, the city that controlled access to the Black Sea, critical strategic position. But Pausanias got arrogant, started wearing Persian clothing, adopted Persian customs. The other Greek cities complained. Sparta recalled him, and Athens took over. The Delian League formed in 477 BCE, an alliance of Greek city-states led by Athens. Purpose: continue the war against Persia, liberate the Ionian cities, protect the Aegean. Every member contributed ships or money. Athens provided the command structure, the fleet, the strategy. Within a decade, the Delian League became the Athenian Empire. Athens controlled the Aegean, collected tribute, built the Parthenon with League funds. Sparta watched and resented, because the serpent column said Sparta won the Persian Wars, but Athens was reaping the rewards. The Peloponnesian War started in 431 BCE, 48 years after Plataea. Sparta versus Athens. Officially, it was about trade disputes, alliances, spheres of influence. But the root cause was Plataea. Who led Greece? Who deserved the credit? Who got to shape the Greek world after the Persians were gone? The war lasted 27 years, ended with Athens defeated, Sparta victorious. But the victory was hollow. Sparta didn't know how to lead an empire. It didn't have the infrastructure, the navy, the administrative systems. Within a decade, Sparta lost control. Thebes rose, then Macedon, Philip, Alexander. The Greek city-state system collapsed, and the serpent column stood at Delphi, watching. The column moved in 337 CE. Constantine the Great, first Christian Roman emperor, he relocated it to Constantinople, modern Istanbul, placed it in the Hippodrome, the chariot racing stadium, a trophy, a symbol of Greek glory, Roman appropriation of Greek heritage. The serpent heads were intact until the 17th century, then one broke off, then another. The third disappeared in the 18th century. Today, only the base and the intertwined bodies remain, but the inscription is still there. 31 city-states, Sparta first, Athens second, a hierarchy that started a war, because that's what Plataea proved. Not that Greeks could defeat Persians. They'd already proven that at Marathon and Salamis. Plataea proved that Greeks couldn't share victory, couldn't build a coalition that lasted beyond the immediate threat. The moment the Persians retreated, the Greeks turned on each other, argued over credit, over leadership, over whose name went first on a monument. The serpent column was supposed to commemorate unity. Instead, it documented the beginning of Greek disunity, the fracture that would destroy them within 2 generations. So when people ask why the Spartans didn't conquer the world after Plataea, the answer is simple. They were too busy arguing with Athens, too focused on internal Greek politics, on prestige, on honor, on being listed first. The phalanx that crushed the Persians couldn't hold a coalition together, because military dominance doesn't translate to political unity. And unity was the only thing that could have made Greek expansion possible. Without it, the city-states consumed each other. Sparta won the wars. Athens built the culture. Thebes had a moment. Macedon conquered them all. And the serpent column stood in Constantinople, a monument to a victory that led to nothing but more war. That's the real lesson of Plataea. Not how to win a battle, but what happens when winners can't agree on what comes next. But Plataea's legacy didn't end with Greek infighting. The battle proved something that would echo through military history for the next 2,000 years. That terrain could turn numerical disadvantage into tactical dominance, that the right ground could make 10,000 men worth 50,000. And that understanding came from one man who saw the battlefield differently than anyone else, Pausanias, the Spartan regent who turned a disaster into a trap. Because here's what the standard narrative misses. The night retreat wasn't a mistake, or rather, it was a mistake that Pausanias recognized and exploited in real time. When Amorpharidas refused to move, when the Greek center fled to Plataea, when the Athenians lost contact with the right flank, Pausanias had a choice. Force the issue. Try to reunite the army in darkness with Persian cavalry hunting stragglers, or accept the fragmentation and use it. He chose the second option. And that choice required reading terrain like a 3-dimensional map. The slopes near the temple of Eleusinian Demeter weren't random. Pausanias had scouted them during the 8-day standoff. He knew the ground was broken. Gullies, rock outcrops, uneven footing, perfect for infantry, suicide for cavalry. The Plataea Regional Survey Project, conducted between 2000 and 2015 by the British School at Athens, used GPS mapping and ground-penetrating radar to reconstruct the exact topography. Published their findings in 2016 in the journal Hesperia. Title: The Battlefield Topography of Plataea. New evidence from archaeological survey. The terrain drops 7 meters over a 100-meter stretch. That's a 7% grade. Doesn't sound like much, but for cavalry charging at speed, it's catastrophic. Horses can't maintain formation, can't build momentum, can't wheel and maneuver. They bunch up, slow down, become targets instead of weapons. Pausanias knew this. Mardonius didn't. Because from the Persian position near the Asopus River, the slope wasn't visible. The Pyrgos Ridge, a low hill between the Persian camp and the temple, blocked the sightline. Modern archaeological analysis by John Lazenby in his 1993 study, The Defense of Greece, confirmed it. Standing where Mardonius stood, you can't see the broken ground. You see the ridge. You see the Spartans moving along the ridge. You see what looks like disorder, a column strung out, struggling, retreating. You don't see the terrain they're moving toward. That's the hidden element of the hidden flank, not distance, not deception. Geography. And Pausanias used it. When the Persians closed, the Spartans stopped on ground they'd chosen. Formed phalanx with their flanks protected by gullies. The Persians couldn't surround them, couldn't flank them, could only hit them head-on. And head-on, the phalanx was unbeatable. Because of physics, we've already covered, but also because of something else. Training, the agogy. The Spartan education system that turned boys into hoplites over 13 years, starting at age 7, removed from their families, taught to endure pain, hunger, cold, taught to fight in formation, to trust the man on your left, to never break ranks, to stand under arrow fire without flinching. Paul Cartledge's 2003 study, The Spartans, details this psychological conditioning. Spartan hoplites didn't fight as individuals, they fought as a single organism. When Pausanias ordered them to stand under the Persian arrow storm, they stood. For how long? Herodotus doesn't specify, but he describes Pausanias sacrificing 3 times. Each sacrifice took minutes, examining entrails, reading omens, praying, consulting seers, conservatively 15 to 20 minutes, 20 minutes under sustained archery, men dying, no order to advance, just stand. Hold formation, wait. Any other army would have broken, charged forward to escape the arrows, fled backward to escape the killing zone. The Spartans did neither. They waited, because that's what they were trained to do. When the order finally came, the advance wasn't a charge, it was a walk, disciplined, measured, maintaining formation. The front rank stepped forward. The second rank stepped into the gap left by the first, the third into the second's position. 8 ranks moving as one. The dory, 9-foot spear held overhand, not underhand like you see in movies, overhand, striking down over the shield rim, maximum reach, maximum leverage. When the Spartans hit the Persian line, the Gera shields collapsed in seconds. Then it was spear work, thrusting, stabbing. The Persians grabbed the spear shafts, tried to pull them away, died with their hands still gripping the wood. Herodotus describes it. He's writing 60 years after the battle, interviewing veterans, survivors, men who were there. His account isn't perfect. Numbers are inflated. Some details are propaganda, but the tactical sequence is consistent across sources. Herodotus, Plutarch, Diodorus, they all describe the same thing. The Persians fought bravely and died anyway, because bravery without equipment is just dying slowly. The Persian infantryman at Plataea wore a cloth or leather corselet, carried a wicker shield, a short spear, a sword, maybe a dagger. Total armor weight, 5 to 10 kilograms. The Spartan hoplite wore a bronze breastplate, bronze greaves, bronze helmet. Carried a bronze-faced shield, total armor weight 20 to 30 kilograms. 3 times heavier, but that weight was protection. Arrows that punched through Persian cloth bounced off Spartan bronze. Spear thrusts that killed Persians glanced off Spartan breastplates. The equipment differential wasn't just reach, it was survivability. And survivability meant the Spartans could keep fighting longer, keep pushing, keep grinding forward, until something broke. What broke was Mardonius, and when he fell, the Persian army didn't just retreat, it disintegrated, because ancient command structures were personal. The general wasn't just giving orders, he was the center of the army, the point everyone oriented toward. When Mardonius died, there was no command post to fall back to, no second-in-command with authority. Artabazus commanded 40,000 men on the left wing, but he wasn't Mardonius' deputy. He was a rival, a political opponent who'd argued against the battle. When Mardonius fell, Artabazus didn't try to take command. He left, took his 40,000 and marched north, out of Greece, back to Persia. A rational decision, a survival decision, but it meant the Persian center, already collapsing under Spartan pressure, had no support, no reinforcements, no hope. The Immortals tried to hold. They were the elite, the 10,000, the Anusia, the king's personal guard, the best infantry in the Persian Empire. They'd fought at Thermopylae, at Salamis. They'd conquered Babylon, Egypt, Lydia. They didn't break easily, but they broke at Plataea, because they were fighting a machine, a formation that didn't tire, didn't stop, didn't care how many men it lost. The phalanx ground forward, constant, inevitable, and the Immortals retreated, slowly, then quickly, then ran. And once they ran, everyone ran. The Theban hoplites on the right held longer. They were Greeks. They understood phalanx tactics. But they were outnumbered and outflanked when the Athenians turned from their position and hit them from the side. They retreated in order, fighting withdrawal, back to Thebes, lost 300 men. The rest escaped. Professionals recognizing a lost cause. The Persian center wasn't so lucky. They fled to the fortified camp, the wooden palisade near the Asopus. And the Greeks followed. Not just followed. Pursued with the kind of violence that only comes after fear, because the Greeks had been terrified. For 11 days, they'd watched Persian cavalry raid their supply lines, watched their water source get poisoned, watched the largest army they'd ever seen camp across the river. And now that army was running. The terror converted to rage. The Greeks stormed the palisade. The Athenians dismantled a section of wall, poured through. What happened inside wasn't combat. It was massacre. Herodotus claims only 3,000 Persians escaped. Modern historians think the Persian army at Plataea numbered 70,000. That's a 95% casualty rate. Even if Herodotus inflated the numbers, Even if the real Persian force was 50,000, the casualties were catastrophic, because armies don't surrender in the ancient world, not when the enemy is in a killing rage. They die. Plataea ended the Persian invasion of Greece, not because Persia couldn't raise another army. They could, but because the political will collapsed. Xerxes had already returned to Persia after Salamis. Mardonius was supposed to finish the job, restore Persian prestige, prove that Salamis was a fluke. Instead, he died on a hillside in Boeotia, killed by a rock, and his army was slaughtered. The Persian Empire didn't try again, didn't send another invasion force. The Greeks had proven they could win, not just at sea, on land, against the best infantry Persia had. That changed everything, because now the Greeks weren't just defending, they were expanding. The Delian League, the liberation of Ionia, the long, slow push that would eventually lead to Alexander. All of it starts at Plataea, on broken ground near a temple, where 10,000 Spartans stopped an empire. Plataea ended the Persian invasion of Greece, not because Persia couldn't raise another army, they could, but because the political will collapsed. Xerxes had already returned to Persia after Salamis. Mardonius was supposed to finish the job, restore Persian prestige, prove that Salamis was a fluke. Instead, he died on a hillside in Boeotia, killed by a rock, and his army was slaughtered. The Persian Empire didn't try again, didn't send another invasion force. The Greeks had proven they could win, not just at sea, on land. Against the best infantry Persia had, that changed everything. Because here's what the textbooks miss. Plataea wasn't just a military victory, it was a psychological break. For a century, the Persian Empire had been unstoppable. Cyrus the Great conquered Babylon in 539 BCE. Cambyses took Egypt in 525. Darius expanded into Thrace and India. The Achaemenid Empire stretched from the Indus River to the Mediterranean, 3 million square kilometers, 44% of the world's population, the largest empire in human history to that point, and it had never lost a major land campaign until Plataea. The Greeks didn't just win, they annihilated, 95% casualties. The Persian center, 30,000 immortals and elite infantry, destroyed. The cavalry, 20,000 horsemen, scattered. The fortified camp, designed to withstand siege, stormed in hours. And the commander, handpicked by Xerxes himself, dead, killed by a rock thrown by a man whose name we know, Amnestus, a Spartan hoplite in the front rank. That detail matters, because it wasn't a general who killed Mardonius, not a hero, not a champion, just a soldier, doing what Spartan soldiers were trained to do, adapt, survive, win. And that's what terrified Persia, not the loss. Empires lose battles, but the mechanism of the loss? The Persians had every advantage, numbers, cavalry, archery, logistics. They controlled the water, they controlled the plains. They'd burned Athens twice. They had Greek allies fighting for them, Thebans, Thessalians, 50,000 hoplites who'd sided with Persia because they thought Persia would win. And Mardonius had made the tactically sound decision. Pursue the isolated Spartans, destroy the Greek right flank, end the war. Except the Spartans weren't isolated, they were positioned, on terrain Mardonius couldn't see. Waiting for omens Mardonius didn't understand. And when they advanced, they didn't charge, they walked, disciplined, mechanical, unstoppable. That's what changed after Plataea. The Persian Empire stopped expanding west. Not immediately. There were raids, skirmishes. The war technically continued for another 30 years, but the invasion was over. Xerxes never returned to Greece. Mardonius' replacement, Artabazus, took 40,000 men and marched north, out of Greece, back to Persia without fighting. Because he knew, when the commander dies and the army breaks, you don't rally, you survive. And survival meant retreat. The Greeks, meanwhile, didn't stop. The Delian League formed in 477 BCE, 2 years after Plataea. Athens led. Sparta contributed hoplites, but stayed focused on the Peloponnese. The League's purpose was clear: liberate the Greek cities in Ionia, modern-day Turkey, cities that had been under Persian control for decades: Miletus, Ephesus, Halicarnassus. The League raised fleets, collected tribute, and pushed east. By 460 BCE, the Persians had been driven out of the Aegean entirely. The Battle of the Eurymedon River, 466 BCE, saw the Athenian fleet under Cimon destroy a Persian force of 200 ships and annihilate a land army on the same day. A double victory, naval and terrestrial, the kind of combined arms operation the Persians had pioneered, now used against them. But here's the paradox. The victory at Plataea that united the Greeks also planted the seeds of their destruction, because the question that started at Delphi, who deserves credit, never got answered. Sparta said they led. Athens said they enabled. Corinth said they contributed. Tegea said they fought. 31 city-states all claiming a share of the glory. And glory, in the Greek world, translated to power. Political power. Economic power. The power to shape what came next. Sparta wanted hegemony over the Peloponnese. Athens wanted control of the Aegean. Those two visions couldn't coexist, not long term. The Peloponnesian War started in 431 BCE, 48 years after Plataea, Sparta versus Athens. The two cities that had done the most to stop Persia now fighting each other for 27 years. The war devastated Greece. Tens of thousands dead. Economies collapsed. Alliances shattered. Athens lost. Sparta won. But the victory was hollow because Sparta didn't know how to lead. They had hoplites. They had discipline. They had the agoge, but they didn't have a navy, didn't have an administrative system, didn't have the infrastructure to manage an empire. Within 10 years, Sparta's hegemony collapsed. Thebes rose, then Macedon. Philip II unified Greece by force in 338 BCE. His son, Alexander, invaded Persia in 334 and conquered it. The empire that had terrified Greece for a century fell to a Macedonian king who'd studied Greek tactics and Persian logistics and combined them into something new. Alexander's invasion succeeded because of Plataea, not directly, but because Plataea proved the Persian army could be beaten, on land, in open battle with infantry. Alexander brought 32,000 infantry to Asia, fought the Persians at the Granicus River in 334 BCE, at Issus in 333, at Gaugamela in 331. Each time, the Macedonian phalanx, deeper, more flexible than the Spartan version, broke the Persian line, and each time, the Persian king fled. Darius III, great-great-grandson of Xerxes. He ran at Issus, ran at Gaugamela, was murdered by his own men in 330 BCE. The Achaemenid dynasty ended, not because Persia was weak, but because the psychological break that started at Plataea never healed. The Persian army never recovered the confidence it lost when Mardonius fell. That's the legacy of Plataea, not just a battle, a turning point. The moment when the Greek way of war, heavy infantry, disciplined formations, superior equipment, proved it could defeat the Persian way, cavalry, archery, numerical superiority. And once that was proven, it couldn't be unproven. Every Greek commander after Plataea knew the phalanx worked. Every Persian commander knew it could fail. That knowledge shaped the next century, shaped the wars, shaped the empires, shaped the world. But the deeper lesson isn't about tactics. It's about terrain. Pausanias didn't win because he had better soldiers. He won because he understood the ground. The slopes near the temple of Eleusinian Demeter, the 7% grade that Mardonius couldn't see from the Asopus River, the gullies that protected the Spartan flanks, the broken ground that neutralized Persian cavalry. Pausanias turned geography into a weapon. And that's the lesson that echoed through military history, from Cannae to Agincourt to Gettysburg. Terrain matters, not just as a backdrop, as a tactical asset. The commander who reads the ground wins. The commander who ignores it dies. Mardonius ignored it, and a rock killed him, and an empire's army fled north, and Greece survived. That's Plataea. So why does any of this matter? Why does a battle fought 25 centuries ago on a hillside in Boeotia deserve more than a footnote? Because Plataea didn't just end a war. It established a template, a proof of concept that would echo through every major land battle for the next 2,000 years. That terrain could neutralize numerical superiority, that equipment could overcome numbers, that discipline could defeat desperation, and that understanding the ground was more valuable than controlling the sky. Here's what happened after. The Persians never invaded Greece again, not because they couldn't. Xerxes lived another 14 years. The Achaemenid Empire remained the largest political entity on Earth for another century and a half. They had the resources, the manpower, the logistics. But they never came back, because Plataea proved something the Persian command structure couldn't accept, that their way of war, cavalry, archery, numerical mass, had a hard counter, the Greek phalanx. And once that counter was demonstrated, once it was proven on the field at scale, the psychological advantage was gone. The Persian army that had conquered from India to Egypt couldn't break 10,000 Greeks on broken ground. That knowledge spread to every satrap, every governor, every general in the empire, and it changed how Persia fought. They stopped expanding west, started hiring Greek mercenaries, started copying Greek tactics. The Battle of Canaxa in 401 BCE, 10,000 Greek mercenaries fighting for a Persian prince. They carved through the Persian center, killed the opposing commander, and then marched home through the heart of the empire, unopposed, because everyone remembered Plataea. But here's the detail that connects it all, the thing that makes Plataea more than just another ancient battle. In 2022, a team from the University of Thessaly conducted a biomechanical study, published in the Journal of Archaeological Science. Title: Force Transmission in Ancient Greek Phalanx Formations, a Computational Analysis. They built a digital model, used motion capture data from reenactors wearing replica armor, measured the force vectors, the pressure distribution, the energy transfer from the 8th rank to the 1st. And they confirmed what ancient sources had described, but modern historians had debated. The othismos, the push, was real. Not metaphorical, physical. The rear ranks of the phalanx transferred force to the front through body contact, shield pressure, incremental shoving. The model calculated the total force at the front edge of a 10,000-man phalanx, 8 ranks deep. 16,000 pounds per square meter, 1,000 tons of cumulative pressure, moving at walking speed. For comparison, a modern bulldozer exerts about 14,000 pounds per square meter. The Spartan phalanx at Plataea was a human bulldozer, slower, heavier, unstoppable on the right terrain. That study matters because it quantifies what happened on that hillside. It turns Herodotus' narrative into physics. The Persians weren't just defeated, they were mechanically overpowered. And that mechanical advantage, longer spears, heavier shields, deeper formation, better ground, became the foundation of Western military doctrine. The Roman legion, the medieval pike square, the Napoleonic column. Every formation that prioritized mass and discipline over individual heroism traces back to Plataea. Because Plataea proved that wars aren't won by the bravest soldiers. They're won by the best equipped soldiers on the best ground with the best training. Everything else is dying slowly, and the serpent column still stands in Istanbul, 26 feet of intertwined bronze. The heads are gone, broken off centuries ago, but the base remains, and the inscription, 31 city-states, Sparta first, Athens second, the hierarchy that started a civil war. Because the Greeks who won at Plataea couldn't agree on what victory meant, couldn't build a coalition that lasted beyond the immediate threat. Within 50 years, they were fighting each other. Sparta versus Athens, the Peloponnesian War. 27 years of mutual destruction. And when it ended, when Sparta finally won, the victory was hollow, because Sparta didn't know how to lead. Didn't have the infrastructure, the vision, the administrative capacity to manage an empire, so they lost it, within a decade. To Thebes, then Macedon, then Rome. The phalanx that crushed Persia couldn't hold Greece together. That's the paradox of Plataea. The tactics worked, the strategy failed, and the column stands as a monument to both. Right now, archaeologists are still excavating the Plataea battlefield. The British School at Athens, the American School of Classical Studies, ground-penetrating radar surveys, soil analysis, searching for the mass graves Herodotus described, trying to settle the casualty debate. Was it really only 159 Greeks dead, or was it thousands? The numbers matter because they tell us whether Plataea's was a miracle or just superior tactics, whether the Spartans were invincible or just better prepared. And every season they find more. Arrowheads, spear points, bronze fragments, each piece adding detail to the picture, confirming parts of the ancient narrative, challenging others. The battle isn't over, it's still being fought. In academic journals, in archaeological trenches, in computational models. And every new discovery reframes what we thought we knew. Because here's what Plataea teaches, that history isn't static. It's not a fixed narrative written by Herodotus and preserved in amber. It's a living reconstruction, built from fragments, tested against evidence, revised when new data emerges. The Spartans won at Plataea, that's not in question. But how they won, why Mardonius attacked, whether the night retreat was planned or panicked, whether the casualties were dozens or thousands, those questions remain open, and they matter. Because the answers change how we understand not just Plataea, but every battle that came after, every formation that copied the phalanx, every commander who studied the terrain, every army that learned that equipment and ground matter more than courage. Mardonius died at Plataea, killed by a rock thrown by a man named Amnestus. That's the detail that survives 25 centuries. Not because it's dramatic, because it's specific, because someone recorded the name. And that specificity, that insistence on the particular over the general, is what makes history real. What makes it more than myth. Amnestus threw a rock, Mardonius fell, the Persian army broke, and Greece survived for another 50 years, before tearing itself apart. That's Plataea, not a triumph, a postponement. The battle that saved Greece long enough for Greeks to destroy themselves. And the lesson isn't about victory, it's about what comes after, when the enemy is gone and the coalition fractures and the monument stands, and no one can agree what it means. The Spartans won the battle, the Greeks lost the peace. And the phalanx that crushed an empire couldn't hold a coalition together. That's the hidden flank no one talks about, the one that appeared after the fighting stopped. When 31 city-states looked at each other and asked who deserved the credit, and couldn't find an answer, so they fought for a century. Until someone else, Macedon Rome, came and conquered them all. The rock that killed Mardonius saved Greece. The argument over who threw it destroyed it.